Well, welcome to the exclusive. I'm your host, Sharon Tharp. Obviously, we're in the off season of Big Brother, but I'm happy to chat about it because, he's the reason we all stay sane and informed every summer with his daily live feed updates on Rob Has a Podcast. And now he's written a book about it called Behind the Mirror, which touches on the evolution of the show, the impact on his life, and so I'm so excited to get into it. And it's his first time on the podcast, so welcome, Taran Armstrong.
Hello, so excited to be here. Always great talking to you, Sharon.
Yes, thank you so much for doing this. I finished the book. It's amazing. If people haven't already, check it out. You're doing pretty well in sales, huh? Bestseller?
Yeah, we hit the USA Today bestseller list, which is pretty wild. It was number 15, which means it was because that list is like just numbers. And so that means it was like the 15th best-selling book in the country, just
That's
period.
wild.
Which is yeah, really wild.
Awesome. I mean, it's cool. Congrats.
It is very cool. It is very cool. I knew that my audience would be interested in it and would hopefully like it, but I was not expecting so much support and sort of interest.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. And we're gonna talk about it, but real quick, how are you doing in the off season, which is not an off season for you this year, but yeah, how's sort of the whirlwind of the book going and just not being in the deep trenches of the Big Brother summer, I guess.
It's been great. I mean, this was an intense season, so it's been very nice to be able to sort of like come back from that. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff happening with the book and everything else, but it just feels so much more. I mean, some of the stuff I write about in the book is how the show is. It lives with you. It's a constant companion, and that's really fun in some ways. But when it doesn't let up, it can be pretty. It can be a lot. So,
Yep.
just being able to sort of get back to regular life and a good schedule and sleeping a little bit better and all of that has been very nice.
I would hope so, Taryn. Yeah, I'm always curious what you think because I feel like whether I like a season or not could be a different answer of whether I liked covering a season. So, like, what did you think about Big Brother 27 in terms of like covering it, but also as a fan watching it?
Yeah, it is. They're very different experiences, and I very much have to like have two different brains about it.
Yeah.
Where like, if say the feeds go down for a day or days at a time, I am annoyed as a fan, also annoyed as a creator, as somebody making content about the show, because it makes it more difficult to create content about the show. But there is a part of me that's like, "Ooh,
I get an
get a
hour of
day
sleep.
off." And
I get it.
so that is an interesting aspect of it, and it's the same thing with like how intense and entertaining the season is. When a season starts to die down, especially toward the end, and nothing's really happening, on one hand it's really boring, but on the other hand, it's much better for like a work life balance for me.
Yeah.
And
I don't even know how
so
you have one of those in the summer, but
exactly. So yeah, season like 27, that never let up. On one hand, it was so rewarding to be there every morning and have so many people still so engaged for so long and really loving the coverage this summer. I mean, I think we did the best we've ever done. The show was rating to Rob. Like it was really, really cool. But then, yeah, then on the other hand, it was a lot. It was intense.
yeah, I felt the same because I was up until the last day listening to your live feed updates, which to me says a good season. But yeah, it's
Mhm.
a lot of work for you, Taryn. I get
Yeah.
it. And real quick, I just want to ask, I think you're doing a little Amazing Race stuff over on your Patreon or your Twitch,
Yep.
right? A little bit. Just overall, what are your thoughts just seeing Big Brother players on their race? I know obviously we've seen success with Claire and Derek and Justin Cody who won the show. But do you think a lot of like, is there any correlation to like Big Brother skills versus Amazing Race skills? Or is it just because you've been on TV before you might have a little bit of an edge? Do you have any
It's a good
thoughts on that?
question. I think I'm sure being on TV to some degree gives you an edge. Just doing challenges in general. I think is going to be good. It's something that I talk about with Jag a lot. I don't know if we're spoiling up to this point of the
Yeah,
Amazing
it's
Race, but
fine.
like,
Yeah.
um, is that one of the things, obviously, his competition in Big Brother 25 is heavily noted, but something that he was very good at, and I think is very good at on The Amazing Race, and probably something that he was able to hone through his experience of playing so many competitions on Big Brother, because he played some of the most, like, I think he's
I was
played
gonna say
the most
statistically,
amount of competitions almost of almost any player. Um, and so at least for like the big winners. And so he knows how to optimize in ways that if you're completely fresh to something like The Amazing Race, you might not have that in you. You might not be thinking about like, how can I just make this a little bit faster? And those little bits really add up in the race, it seems. And then I also heard that like the challenge producer on this season, The Amazing Race, was the same one on, on his season of the show. So that probably helps a lot as well.
that's that when I heard that, I was like, "Are you serious?" Like, no, and it, no offense to Jag, because he's like I said, he's earned sort of his spot. But yeah, he's probably just like, damn, like now people are gonna point to that as if that's something a leg
I
up he
think
had.
especially as somebody that was really like, I don't really know how good Jag is at competitions from watching him on Big Brother. I think that The Amazing Race for me has, it doesn't change how I felt about his game overall, but I do think that it has confirmed to me that he is a good competitor.
Yeah.
He still was losing to the likes of Heisem and the other dude whose name I don't remember at this point.
Don't ask me. I don't know either.
Early on, but like, but he clearly, and I think maybe even more importantly, has improved probably upon his experience or his prowess at competitions. But overall, The Amazing Race, I was wary because you go from Big Brother, and I've now had experience watching these other shows with Big Brother players, the traders especially, where it's like it's pretty brutal.
Yeah.
Like look what they did to my guy Dan Giesling. Look what they did to poor Danielle Reyes, who every like random person on the street I talk to in my life who has seen the traders is like, oh, I hate her. And it's like, no, you don't
It kills me
understand. She's
inside, Taran. I don't know
amazing.
about you. It kills me when people say
It
that.
does. And it's like, this is what happens
Yep.
when people who went on a show with live feeds go on a different show that is beholden to where the audience reaction to them is beholden to the edit that they receive. And so I'm getting a little bit of that in The Amazing Race. Of course, I know some of the people on it, and it was honestly the best part about it to me is just getting to watch so many of the people that I really like and care about, like having a good time, enjoying themselves, just like having fun on the race. I don't like it when they're not having fun on the race,
Yeah.
but there were some moments that felt really fun.
Yeah. I totally agree. I just want people to have a good experience just because also, and you talk about it in the book and we'll get into it, but Big Brother is so, I think you even say like some people say traumatic, and I would probably say that as well. And so, yeah, I think after that, I just want them to go on the race and like have a good time more than
Yeah,
anything. But I also, and we'll talk about the live feeds as well. That's a huge difference because now they're all on the edited show, and it's interesting to see. Like, I think I've heard. I mean, I'm not on Chat BCC, but I've heard that there's a lot missing from the edit.
yeah,
Well, we've seen that before on Big Brother, so
yeah.
it's fine. But yeah, getting to the book, like what made you want to write the book? What convinced you, and any hesitations, I guess, about writing this?
So basically, the story is I had a literary agent reach out to me, just kind of like cold, and said, "Hey, I'm a big fan. I also went to Emerson College, so we're like fellow alumni. I've followed your stuff for years, and I've always felt like you'd be a really great writer. Would you ever be interested in writing a book?" And what the other part of it was like that she now sort of had the ability to help me and represent me in a way. And I had no idea, you know, what the validity of that or like
Right.
any
I'd
of
be
it.
like, is this spam? Like, what is this?
Right. I've received messages in the past
I'm
from
sure.
people who claim all kinds of things, and usually like a quick Google search will be like, okay, I thought so.
Yep.
But she was legit, and she had actually represented like a friend of mine. And so really the answer was like, well, yeah. I mean, I grew up always wanting to be a writer, more so than anything else. I went to college for screenwriting because I was like, well, this is
Oh, wow.
in my deranged child brain. I thought, well, being a book author is too unrealistic, but writing movies seems more seems more plausible. Um, and so obviously none of that really panned out in the way that I thought it would. And so a big thing for me is that if there is an opportunity for me to do something that I want to do, I can't turn it down. That's how I started podcasting in the first place. It's like, if I'm lucky enough to have this opportunity, I can't say no to it because I'm scared or because I don't think I can do it. Um, and so I said yes, even though I had really no idea what I was getting into. We talked through different potential ideas for what a book would be. She didn't come to me asking about a Big Brother book. She was just like, anything,
Hmm.
really. I can represent you on anything. And for me, it like the place I felt most comfortable, especially because I'd never written a full book before, at least like to the level of like a publishing quality. Uh, in my head, it was like, well, I feel like the slam dunk here is I can certainly write a book about Big Brother. I have a built-in audience for it, and I know so much about the show.
Yeah, the
There's certain
knowledge is
I'm
already
sure
there.
I could do something there. I didn't know exactly what. Um, she suggested I read Bachelor Nation, which was a book that did very well about The Bachelor. I don't know how
Amy
long ago it was written
Kaufman,
now.
was that
Amy
her?
Kaufman, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I read that, and I was like, and I really liked it, and I was like, okay, yeah. I mean, I can definitely do this for Big Brother. And, there were things I really liked about the way that she wrote that book and things that I was like, well, I think I would do this a bit differently. And so I was like, yeah, I mean, I for sure have the level of knowledge necessary. And I think I can tell a fun and interesting story here. And so the shape of the book became, a history of the show, but much more so also like an analysis of the show. And the 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 bits of me in the book mostly came later. They weren't really part of the initial idea. I knew I would be a part of the book in some capacity, but it sort of grew a little bit as time went on.
Yeah, which I'm going to ask in a minute. But real quick, in terms of the research, because you're right, you talk about the history of Big Brother, which is complicated, right? There's, it started in the Netherlands. It's been a lot of iterations over the years. And a lot of this happened in the late 90s, early 2000s, where, it's not as easy with like digital archives and all that. So, like, in terms of research, was it difficult and how long did that take? It's because it seems like you did a lot, which is great.
Thank you. It for sure was a lot, and it was pretty difficult, especially because a lot of the sort of like primary sources I was looking for, especially for the stuff I knew the least about, was the stuff in the Netherlands, and
Yep.
so all of it was in Dutch. It was,
Oh, wow. Okay.
and I had to figure out a way. Like I bought this book from a Dutch author about John de Mol, and I had to find a way to like translate it. And there were websites that I was reading that I was translating. And so yeah, that was probably one of the bigger challenges, was just trying to find good sources um, for that early stuff. There were a bunch of good sources, especially through the Internet Archive, which was massively helpful throughout the entire thing. For the US edition, I also had a book called The $1 Billion Game that I found that was written by Peter Bazalgett. who helped bring the show Big Brother to the UK. And he had written a book. The book is about three shows: Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, Survivor, and Big Brother. And because they were like the three big shows at the time. And he's really like a guy that really loves like the business side of it. Like he really tells the story of like the great deal maker John DeMol and how how he made himself a billionaire by getting the deal from Les Moonves at CBS and all this stuff, which honestly is not that interesting to me. But he had a lot of other interesting details, especially for some of the international versions that I found pretty interesting, and I included some of that in the book as well. But yeah, just a lot of research and most of it too, outside of the Netherlands stuff, was a lot of like, okay, I knew this in my head, but I never had like a concrete source for it. So as I'm doing research, I'm like, oh, look,
Yep.
it's true.
That's sort of how I felt reading your book, Taran, because it's like you've heard these things over the years, but you're like, where's this actually coming from? So now
Exactly.
you confirmed it.
I
Thank
really
you.
expected, honestly, and maybe there were some things, but honestly, not very big ones. I really expected to go back and be like, oh, turns out this has been
Yep.
exaggerated over the years or is misremembered. But for the most part, a lot of it was like, oh no, this is really like pretty much remembered fairly accurately. Maybe one of the bigger surprises to me was just how well season one still did in the ratings,
Mm.
beating the Olympics in the finale, getting like 11 million viewers for the finale. And really, like, the failure of it was how quickly it bled viewers because it started at double that number. And in comparison, Survivor had doubled its numbers. So it was less about the raw numbers of season one. Season one like holds many records for the most amount of viewers in any amount of episodes, but it was losing viewers so fast, and that was really what the failure and the critical response, of course, was really bad.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think because I remember distinctly Survivor being so huge and just like a juggernaut. And I think obviously season one probably benefited from that of the early days of reality TV, the promotion of it all. But you're right. It sort of just like fell off a cliff, I feel like.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, and you touched on talking about yourself a bit in the book, which, it's not like you go crazy, but I just, as I know you from the podcast, you're very private and similar to me. Like I don't love putting a lot of my personal life out there, but I think even more so probably with you. I guess how comfortable were you with that, and was that a difficult part of the writing process?
Um, I think in terms of like talking about my life, it is something that I don't do in content very often, primarily because I don't think it's really relevant
Relevant.
to the content. And I
Fair.
do enjoy, keeping my sort of spaces separate. I think that that's, especially as the season gets really intense, it's really nice
Yes.
to be able to like unplug and feel like I'm completely separated. Um, but I'm relatively open just in real life. I've talked about these things a lot with anybody that cares to ask or to talk with me about it. So in that regard, it wasn't too difficult. But the difficulty for me was more so, um, I feel uncomfortable with like, is this relevant enough? Like,
Oh wow. Okay.
like if somebody picks up a book about Big Brother, how much do they want to hear about some random guy who hasn't even been on the show and like, his life, you know what I mean? And so I really wanted to refrain from, like, I certainly didn't want a whole chapter on myself.
Right.
Anytime I went into my own life, it was only ever like a small, like, pull away and then come right back, make sure it's really relevant to what's happening. And I think the largest chunk of it is when I finally kind of tell the story of how I got on the podcast, but that also was trying to be like doubling as an introduction to the podcast and podcasts in general, and the community at the time in general, because it was all relevant to that. And so, um, the biggest note my editor had for me after my first draft was really like, "I love the stuff about you. Can
Do
maybe
more.
we have more of it?"
Yep.
And that's when I didn't add too much more, but what I did was I tried to link the times I did go into a story, so that it felt like I was telling one cohesive story about myself throughout, without actually adding much bulk to the content itself. And I think that worked pretty well because a lot of people do mention the stuff about me in there, um, and nobody's said it's too much so far. I mean, I think most people are. If you're already a fan of me, you're probably fine with it.
Yeah.
But also it feels like it is present throughout in a way that works. So I've been pretty happy with it. The first big sort of indulgence of it. Um, Really just came from like, I know I need to have a voice in this book. I know that I need to, like, because I am an example of what I'm talking about, I need to give my perspective. It would be silly for me not to. And so it it initially was like, well, as a kid that moved around a lot, obviously I could relate to the whatever. And I was like, that's so boring. Like that doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't make you feel anything. So I was like, it just got deeper and deeper until I was like, I need to sort of properly give you the moment and the picture of what it was like as a kid for me, so that you understand exactly like who I am and where I came from and why it really connected with me so much beyond sort of like the surface level
Yep.
notion of it. And yeah, my biggest fear was just that it was too much and then it'd be like, oh, TMI, dude.
No, I thought it was the perfect amount because I think so many people can relate to that. And also we watch these shows and like and you talk about it, but so many times I'm just like it's weird to be so affected by a TV show. I don't really want to share this with other people. So when you
Mhm.
read your book, I'm like, "Oh, okay, like yes, I feel the same way and most of the other people in this community probably do." But yeah, it was good. It was nice that you sort of wrote it down and verbalized it in that way because that was yeah, I thought it was cool. And also I liked seeing your personality a little bit. Like even, when you mentioned, I think you were talking about the brigade and you're saying the silly names, meow, 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 meow. And you're like, don't ask. Like I like you put in your personality a little bit there. I think it's fun.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, did you have any interesting, I guess, what did your friends and family think? Did they have any thoughts on the book?
um I think like the biggest challenge for me, because I did send it to a couple of friends, one of whom like didn't know anything about the show, um, or didn't know much about the show, I should say, and he really enjoyed it, which was very very fun, and I really appreciated that feedback. Obviously, my biggest sort of like the most amount of nerves I had were like showing it to Taylor and showing it to Dan, like some of the people who had like big presences, but especially Taylor because of how you
Yep.
know just intricate her story is and how personal and meaningful it is to her, and just really feeling like I hope this resonates. I hope I get it right. And so her feedback was by far the most impactful to me in terms of um like the finished product, because she texted me and she was just like, I'm literally bawling my eyes out reading this. It's perfect. And I was just like, oh my God.
It was a great,
Thank
also
God.
great to end that way because so much of the book talks about the evolution of the show and sort of how we've gotten away from things and how important the live feeds are. And so, yeah, I'm not exaggerating when I say when I was rereading because you include Taylor's speech in there, part of it at least, I think. And I was crying again because I kind of forget how bad it was for her. So yeah, no, I thought that was like an amazing sort of part of the book. And that's what I was going to ask you is like, everyone in this community. Like how did you decide who to reach out to, who to talk to for the book? Because, you talked to a lot of people. You talked to Dan, you talked to Steve Moses, you talked to Eric Stein. How did you even narrow that list down?
That was genuinely one of the hardest parts of
Yeah.
the book was um like choosing who to talk to, because I feel like I have so much respect for so many of the players. And when I initially thought of doing the book, I was like, I have access to so many people. Obviously, I'll talk to like all of them.
Right.
And
That's
then,
realistic.
right. And as I went, I sort of realized like, I don't have room for everyone. And it feels disrespectful to like interview somebody for the book and then not it really include much of it or any of it if it doesn't end up becoming part of the story I'm telling. And so then it was like, but then do I feel like I'm snubbing people if I'm not like interviewing them for the book? And so that felt a little
It's
weird.
tricky. Yeah.
Um, ultimately, I talk about it at the very end. Like I cut through the history of the show with a machete. Like there's only so much that can be told. The book itself is almost double the length that I proposed that they bought it for. And so I was already like, they might make me cut a bunch of it. Luckily, they didn't. Um, but yeah, it was tricky, and I definitely left out people that I wish could have had more in there for. I talked to Brittany, and she was like, "I wasn't in the book." And I was like, "You, I mentioned you like three times, very briefly."
It's
It's like,
tricky.
of course, like Brittany Haynes is like one of my favorite players of all time, an incredible character. It feels ridiculous that she wouldn't be a major part of the book in some way, but it just didn't fit in the story that I was telling. Um, and so, yeah, you have to make a cut like that. And then even just like when Rachel Riley comes back in season 27, it's like, well, now I have like a whole chapter on Rachel, right? But she's barely in the initial version right now because it was sort of like, not super important to the specific story I was telling. Um, because ultimately and I could have potentially written a book that was just like season by season, here's the story, here's
Yep.
what happened, here is a highlight of every important character and moment. But I just wasn't as interested in doing that, especially because like I feel like I could do that in podcast form. I could
I
do
was
that
gonna
in
say, I feel like you can do that. Yeah, exactly. I,
we
I
kind of
liked,
did that in the off season
right.
this
Didn't you
year.
do like an evolution of, or yeah, I'm trying to
We did like a
remember.
retrospective going through every season and highlighting all the characters. Um if I'm writing a book, I want to make use of that format, make use of the fact that I can really pick my words carefully and create a structure, the things that blend together, and all of these things in a way that just doesn't really work when you're podcasting. When you're podcasting, you just kind of like go off on rants.
Yep.
And so that was important to me. And it did mean that I wasn't going through every single detail, but I also, felt like I want this book to be approachable for people who don't know the show. And people who don't know the show don't want a season by season recap of the show, right? And so that was part of it too. Like I really wanted this to be something that anybody could pick up and enjoy and take something away from. And I think I did that to the best of my ability at the very least.
No, yeah, you struck a great balance of like, also, yeah, of course, you're going to have to explain what a veto is to someone who doesn't know what that is. So there's enough of that in the book where you're, even as a fan, you're not put off because, of course, like you have to explain those things. But you're right. I don't know how you could have wrote half of this without going in enough of the history of the show or like
Mhm.
there's, yeah, I don't even know how you would propose. Like that's tough because like what would you even cut? You did a great job of weaving the story together. So,
Thank
um,
you.
but yeah, the show you talk about so much of the evolution and how it's, and even from a fan perspective, how much the show has changed, where it's a little less focused on sort of the interpersonal relationships and all of that stuff. Do you think Big Brother is at a point where it's like no going back to the Arnold Shapiro era as you talk about in the book? Like, are we too far gone, Taran?
It certainly seems so. I mean,
Yeah.
the Arnold Shapiro era is so old that there are a lot of fans of the show that weren't even born by the time he wrapped his portion of
Yeah.
that could be on the show next season that were not born yet by the time season 8
That's
started.
wild.
So yeah, probably pretty far gone at this point. But I think also like Alison Grodner has been in charge of the show for the majority of its time on air now. and she has her own style and vision very clearly. And I don't think the show is gonna significantly change while she's in charge, and I don't know if the show exists when she's not.
Yeah.
Who knows? And even if it does pass hands, how much of a change will they really make to it, even if they did, you know?
Yeah. Part of me, Taryn, I'm just like, have you ever pitched CBS? Hey, let me go in there, give you like pull an Eric Stein, be like, here's how to fix the show. You can do it for one season. If it doesn't work, forget it. But like, I can help you fix this show.
I they I won't say they. There are
Okay.
people there who know who I am and know a lot of the things that I talk about. And I think that they just don't always agree with me, or maybe don't often agree
The
with me. Who knows?
I feel like they're
uh,
very precious about the show, which I get. And it's not like, yes, we criticize the show, but we still love the show. We want it to be good. And just, I wish they were a little more open to that. That's all.
I agree. I agree. I think that I would imagine that, and again, like that was a big thing too, is that like I thought about do should I talk to the producers of the show for the book, and ultimately I decided not to because it wasn't really their story that I was telling, and honestly, I wasn't really expecting to get much. And again, it was like even if I somehow cracked, even if they A agreed to it, and B, I got through the PR answers they'd give me, like then what? Then I am telling their story, and that's not really what the book is. And so
Yeah.
what am I doing it for? I think was the big thing for me. It's like it really is the story of the product that is produced, and the fans and the players. Um, and all of the historical stuff from production is the stuff that you know that they have talked about from ages
Mm,
ago that honestly they probably wouldn't remember very well by now, probably have better sources from the original time. And honestly, like I was interested, like I would be interested to know what they think, because I kind of think and or hope that they would be pleasantly surprised by the book and that they actually kind of appreciate it, because it is very much a love letter
yeah.
to the show. And if I certainly like hold their feet to the fire, but like I think in a more nuanced and measured way than I would on a podcast.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. That's fair.
um yeah, I don't know.
It's tough. You talk a lot about, or I don't know a lot, but you talk about the controversies over the years. I mean, how do you not like part of the show,
Mhm.
even at its inception, was casting these crazy characters? I mean, you even talk about in the book about Steve, how disappointed they were in him, and because they expected one thing. He read Dan's book, similar to Dan. He went in this show, he went in this the house and completely switched up. So like, it's funny how they want the controversy, but then obviously when it happens, it sort of like hides away. And I'm curious because I still don't know if I know the answer to this. It's like we've seen sort of themes of racism and all of that over the years, and how much we think production should get involved. And I'm still
Mhm.
torn of like where that line is. And I don't even know what my question is, but it's just like I feel like in the last 5 years or so, whatever people want to call cancel culture, I do feel like the network just feels the pressure from headlines or people online to like make certain decisions, and it's not always consistent. Do you think there's an issue with that on the show? Just like consistency when it comes to like how they handle this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, it's obviously an incredibly complicated situation on all sides. And for as much as we would love there to be an easy answer, there's not
Yeah.
anything that they can do that will please everyone. However, that being said, obviously, I think that there are plenty of things that they can and should be doing that they don't. Plenty of things they are doing that they probably shouldn't. And I think that if you are taking the perspective of maybe not like the people who are like pitchforks out for blood when it comes to like you're doing something wrong, but the perspective of people that are like, hey, some of the people that I mentioned in the book that even from the very beginning were like, hey, there are some issues here, and we feel like they're important. I think from that perspective, they have tried to appease that side of things,
Yep.
whether it's adhering to the casting directive that they no longer need to adhere to, or ejecting people that have said certain things. Um, they've done those things, and they will occasionally highlight stories that are like important to tell. But I think that like the main thing from my perspective is that they don't do them because they want to. They don't seem
Yep.
to do them because they want to, or even because they understand. It seems like they have their own vision, and then they occasionally like capitulate to the
Acquiesce. Yeah.
criticism.
Hmm.
And that's not like the greatest relationship, because then they're resenting the fact that they have to do it in the first place, and they don't fully understand why they're doing it. And I think that if you are able to sort of educate yourself to the point where you understand where these things are coming from and why people are saying these things and why it might be a good idea to implement certain things, it's a lot easier to naturally just do it. And I think that you will get into much less trouble, even if you do make mistakes, even if things do go wrong, because you will instinctually handle them much better generally, because you know where that is coming from. And I think that that can either come from a place of needing to educate yourself, or just coming from a place of like, oh, you just don't agree with that perspective, though. And so that's where things get really messy, and they don't really talk about this stuff publicly anymore, at least. So because when they have in the past, they've kind of demonstrated their ignorance of the topic to some degree. So I think that it is a very tricky thing, and like I said, even if they did all of these things, it's still not gonna make them the most popular people in the world. The live feeds, as I mentioned, add so much scrutiny to their position, and that's why I do give them a lot of credit for continuing to produce the live feeds.
Yep.
Um, because so many shows would rather close the show entirely than have to expose themselves in that kind of way. And so I do give them credit for that, even though they make decisions I don't love a lot of the time. And at the end of the day, I have to that's what I mean. I have to give them credit for the fact that they have given me the perspective I need in order to criticize them.
Right.
I wouldn't have that ammunition if they didn't willingly give it to me. And so there's something there that is valuable. And I do try to highlight that as well.
Yeah, and I like how you articulate that because it's hard for me to reconcile sometimes just because I want to see the real stuff. Like this is what Big Brother was supposed to be, but I also understand there's a line, and it's so tricky because you're right, you can't please everyone. And I do think, and you talk about in the book, a lot of the Shima stuff, the Jeff stuff, like stuff that they didn't show on the show is a bad offense, like almost a worse offense than just I don't
Yeah.
know. I feel like we're in a tricky area of like, you're right. They resent when they have to take action, but this is sort of the fabric of the show. And based on who you cast, I don't know. It's really tricky.
It's something, I think I mentioned this a bit in the book. I don't know if I go into super detail here, but like it was one of the reasons why when Big Brother Canada ended the live feeds, the statement from them, I think I have it in the book,
You do, yeah.
was something along the lines of like, well, part of this is to protect the contestants' mental health. And that really irked me, because the immediate question in my mind was, which contestants are you protecting?
Yep.
Because the implication of that statement is that you are protecting the people that would be criticized for having this exposed to the internet, and the people that are most criticized and face the most amount of backlash are those that are doing some heinous things sometimes. And so you are theoretically protecting those people at the expense of the people who are having to be on the other end of it, who are on the receiving end of that heinous behavior, who now have no record of it and no ability to talk it through with any amount of evidence. It's why I talk about Julia's story from Survivor, what she went through, and the way that she tried to communicate that experience. It would be so completely different on Big Brother.
Yep.
But so yeah, I think that like some of the worst things that they have done, in my opinion, is when they hide these things. And I think in their minds, they're doing it for the sake of the contestants because they see the level one. If we show this, people will not like Jeff. Jeff will be in trouble. But what they don't think of is then, okay, we have now protected Jeff, and that makes it worse for the people. Now we have to sort of throw the people Jeff has harmed under the bus. It just doesn't feel quite as direct, and so I feel like there's a little bit less feeling of like moral culpability there, or maybe it's even worse, and they just fully agree with everything Jeff is doing.
And hire
But
him for
right,
years. Yeah.
so who knows, but I do feel like that is often like the biggest thing that I have trouble with, and we obviously experienced some of that even in season 27,
Mhm.
most recently, where it felt like they were directly throwing it in our faces and communicating to us like, hey, we don't think that Riley is doing anything wrong. Let us continue to show you that over and over.
Yep.
um and yeah, it's just like ugh.
It's almost like the misdirection is what upsets me more. I'd rather you just not show him much as
Exactly.
opposed to
Or
telling a story that he's in love and all this nonsense.
I mean, this is what I said during the season, which is like, if you genuinely don't think he's doing anything wrong, show what he's doing,
Well, that's true too.
right? Why are
Yeah.
you editing it with tinkly music and cutting out specific parts? Clear, like
Yep.
you're telling a story. Why are you needing to edit this if you don't think that there's anything wrong? And if you do think there's something wrong that needs to be edited out, then we're back to where we started, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so tricky because it's like as fans, I want to be able to be critical of the show. We still love the show. Obviously, there's a part of X or Twitter or whatever that out with their pitchforks at all times and calling on the cancellation of this show. It's hard because I understand people's frustrations, but also I'm like, oh my god, if this show gets canceled, like it's so difficult. But I did want to ask that, like, Taryn, do you have you ever thought of like if this show is ever canceled, which I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon, but like what does your life look like without Big
It's
Brother? I'm so curious.
I mean, I'm curious too.
Yeah.
I sort of live with that. My fate is sort of tied to the show in some ways, but not in a way that I think is significant, especially over time. Um, when I first started podcasting, it wasn't even my job. And if the show had gotten canceled, then that would have been it. There was maybe like a period of time where I left my job and I really like made a big bet on this whole thing. Where if it had then been canceled immediately, like that would have been unfortunate. But again, like, I would have just like moved on with my life and done something else. Um, I am always trying to diversify as much as possible in the event that something like that happens. I do now have a Patreon where I cover all kinds of shows, and I really, really love the content I'm making there. I've now written a book. There are plenty of other shows that we cover on the
There's
podcast
more than
itself.
ever, to be honest. Strategy
Exactly. I mean, the
shows.
reality genre is blooming right now,
Yeah.
and so if Big Brother was canceled, it would certainly like be like I would take a hit, I would take a pretty big hit to like what I'm doing, but I'll survive. I mean, I've been in the luckiest and most fortunate position for so long, being able to do what I do. Um, and having the success that I'm having, that it's really just like I'm just gonna continue. Is what I told myself when I started doing it full time, was just like, I don't know how long this will last, and so I'm just going to make the most of it while I can, and appreciate every single step of the process. And then if it ever does go away, I'll know that I won't have any regrets because I'll have taken in as much as I can, and so
Mm.
that's just what I'll continue to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not worried about you at all. But it was interesting because I watched. God, I started watching the live feed correspondence. I guess it was around 17 or whenever that started.
That's yep.
Right? It was around that time, and I remember, and it was so interesting that you told the story of like how the live feed updates occurred because I didn't know that. But yeah, can you talk a little bit about, well, first your pitch to Rob to do it, and then sort of how it evolved?
It was very interesting because I sort of talk about this in the book, but like I especially back then was very sort of cautious about I don't like being a problem for anyone. I don't like being a nuisance.
I could
And
see
so
that, yeah.
like I know that back then and today Rob is constantly dealing with people who are like, "Hey, hey, can I do this thing? What about
Yep.
this?" Like constantly asking for things from him or whatever. And so even back then I was very hesitant to ever be like, hey, I want to do this thing, or like, I want you to do this thing for me, or whatever. I just wanted to be like, hey, I'm here. I'll do my job as well as I can. And if you ever want to do more with me, for me, whatever, I'm down. And I felt a little bad about that at first. I did feel sort of like, man, I'm not really pushing as hard as I can be. And I know that other people are. And maybe that'll, maybe I'll get left behind. Who knows? But I really sort of believed in just doing the best job that I could, and hoping that. And I also never thought it would be like a full time thing. It was again, it was one of those things where it was like, if I have the opportunity, I won't turn it down, and I will work to be in a position for that to be an opportunity. But I'm not going to like aggressively push for this. So I really wanted something like the live feed updates, but it wasn't until um, Rob expressed some interest in it as well. For instance, I guess I'll give you a brief story here. I didn't mention this in the book, but when I started, he used to do the exit interviews, on Friday mornings. And then with the exit interview, there would also be like, here's a morning update from like the events of last night, the HOH, potential nominations, whatever. And initially, he was not doing those with me because I was assigned to a different night. And I was like, damn, that's what I want to be be more than
That's my
anything else.
thing.
And so when he, but I never said anything. And so when he came to me later, because I think over time he started to sort of trust in me more and believe in what I was capable of, with the idea of the live feed updates, he still thought like, I want you to run this, um, and like, help schedule and, be like, host them as often as you can, but like, you are like in charge of this. And I said, oh, this is amazing. And he imagined it like, maybe it's like 10, 20 minutes a
Exactly.
day.
Yep.
It's like a rotating thing. And I was like, I love this idea, Rob. And I just scheduled myself every single day.
I love it.
And then, over time, just, let it grow into what it was. So it was a very sort of like, I had a vision for something, and I sort of took the opportunity that was available and sort of morphed it into what I wanted it to be, is sort of the complicated explanation of it. But yeah, it worked out.
Which is so cool because it's not a job that has ever existed in the history of the world, and I think
Right.
you're probably still the only person who technically does this job in the world, right? Like who else is doing this?
There are
Um,
there
s-
are some there's I mean, obviously there are people who
there
do
are.
write-ups,
Oh, I'm sorry, and also obviously on social media as well.
mhm,
Shout out to them.
and um oh, I never know.
Mad
I
roast.
Mad Roast.
Yeah.
We looked it up because I think she's great. And I mentioned her in the book. And when I was doing the audiobook, I was like, I don't think I've ever said this out loud. I,
I don't think
the
I
name
have
of her
either.
channel. And
I'm
we looked it
assuming.
up, and then we found her. It was took a while. We found her saying the name of it, but now I don't remember it again. But I'm pretty sure it's Mad Roast, or something along those lines.
Apologies if we got it wrong, but yeah. No,
But
I
highly
think it's
recommend
cool.
her. She's great,
Yeah.
and she's been doing it for a very long time.
Yeah, yeah. I also like how you talked a little bit about, yeah, when you were first going on the podcast, like how you didn't want to talk too much. You didn't want to take up too much space. And I have that so much when it comes to podcasting, and
Mhm.
especially on a network like Rob's, because he was God, like in the beginning of podcasting. How long did it take you to sort of get in a groove where you were comfortable?
I honestly like until I had my own space for it.
That's fair.
Even now, like I guess less so now in terms like when I'm on a podcast with and I'm not hosting and there are other co-hosts or even like we have like a former player that we're interviewing, I'm much more conscious about like not taking up a ton of space. Less so because of like insecurity now, and more so because I just think that makes for better podcasting. Personally,
Yeah.
it's just my preference, but like I don't love it when there's a ton of co-hosts and it's a lot of voices and a lot of people trying to be like the main character of the podcast.
Yeah.
And probably the best example of this is when we do our Survivor drafts, and I very much just like there's 7 people on that podcast. So I'm just a bit player here. I just have a little thing that I do. You don't need me to go in depth on every like there's 6 other people on this podcast who have done all of this research and have all of these opinions. And so I feel like there's space for me to be much smaller in that. And then when we have like a player or something on a podcast, I do sometimes notice like the chat will be like, "Man, Taran's so quiet tonight,"
Hmm.
and it's because this is theoretically, if this is like, hey, we have. Let's say Steve Moses on the podcast or something. This is his one time in the entire season that he's on this podcast talking to us. I want to give him as much space to talk as possible and not get in his way. And there will be time, plenty of time throughout the podcast for me to give you the normal things that I'll be giving you on this podcast, but especially for a recap podcast, especially because you'll hear me every single morning give all of my thoughts. I don't need to get in the way of people, even just other regular co-hosts for the podcast who are on, like giving them space to give their thoughts and stuff, I think is important when you're in that position.
Hmm.
But yeah, then when it's my own, when it's the update.
Then it's, yeah, whatever you want. Yeah, I was curious because, yes, I'm a podcaster. I really consider myself like a journalist interviewer. And so the
Mhm.
podcast, I never want to, I just don't like hearing my own voice. So I will even cut, like if I go on a tangent, sometimes I'll just cut it because I'm like, no one cares to hear me. Like, so I get that. Like a lot of what you wrote in the book, I was like, wow, I really relate to this.
Mm.
Which is, I wanted to ask about this question because you've interviewed so many people in the Big Brother community and the reality TV community over the years. Do you ever get nervous? Like, who, I guess, if anyone, would make you nervous for an interview?
That's a good question. Uh, I don't generally get nervous. No, I don't think so. Hey, I'm trying to think even like early on, maybe.
Mm,
Um, I was definitely like nervous to talk to Rob for the first time. I was probably nervous for like the first few time, like when Derek came on the podcast or when Rachel and Brendan were on the podcast, like in that first season. It again, sort of like when I'm not the one interviewing them, but I'm like a part of a podcast with them, that was a little nerve wracking. But in terms of like interviewing itself, if anything, it's like it's it's a more comfortable place to be as an interviewer because I have a
I agree.
purpose, you
I
know,
agree.
and there are distinct roles that we're playing, and usually when you are interviewing somebody, like they're like people love to be interviewed
Yeah,
generally.
they want to talk about
Uh,
themselves.
they love to talk about themselves, and so they're happy to be there usually. So it's not too bad. I mean, maybe if I talked to Dr. Will, I'd be nervous mostly because I'd just be nervous about what he's going to say next that I have to react to.
That's fair.
You
That
know,
is fair. I
who
was on
knows
an
though?
interview with him this morning about Celebrity Weakest Link. Went off on many tangents, and the Fox people were probably like, "What the hell's going on in this interview?" So can never. But you know who I thought about because another thing I related to in the book, you talk a lot about Kaser and sort of the impact
Mhm.
that Kaser had on you. And I felt the same way about Janelle. I think I just
Mm.
graduated high school, or I think I was in college, and I loved her. I loved their friendship. And so, yeah, I feel like would Kaser be someone that you'd be really excited about? Or have you talked to Kaser? I'm trying to
I have
remember.
talked to Kaser, not I think in an official capacity, but I've met him and chatted with him, and I
How
did
cool was
do
that?
like it was very cool. I did do the like hey, you meant a lot to me when I was a kid.
You have to. I mean, yeah.
Which is also like, you got to be careful with how you say that too, because when you say
Yes.
like as a kid, it's like oof.
Aging.
But
Yep.
yeah. But so maybe I said like you meant a lot to me, growing up or something a little more tame. But it was cool. I did introduce, I was like, yeah, I work for Rob as a podcast. Oh yeah, I know Rob. Um, so I wouldn't say that we have like a personal relationship by any means, but I did interact with him. He was of course very nice, and it was very cool. So yeah.
I love Kaser. I have a couple more random questions from things that popped up. You briefly talk about BB22 a little bit, and I just am always curious because I know people are critical, and the boot order is pretty horrific, and the game is pretty predictable also at some point. But I don't know if it was because it was COVID or just because I have so much nostalgia for players like Janelle and Kaser, especially together after 15 years.
Mm.
I still enjoyed watching the season, and I know that's not a popular opinion, and I'm just curious like where you fall on that, because you have people in there that are like your one of your favorite players, but you also understand obviously you're covering it and you're probably bored out of your mind because it's obvious Cody's going to win. So, yeah, I guess like what do you think about that? The criticism of that and your thoughts?
I mean, I understand why people don't like that season. And there's probably an amount of what we talked about earlier where I have two separate experiences of it that is helping me with my viewing of the season, because it was for me a very uh, easy and interesting season to cover generally, because there were things happening. Cody was doing stuff all the time. There was this kind of like weird Cold War between him and Tyler for a little while that then imploded and was a whole weird thing. And then the end game was very, very obvious. But even then, in the end game, you had the what was it? The gentleman or
Oh God, I don't
the wise
remember.
guys, the whole wise guys debacle and the Christmas and Memphis stuff, and then even beyond that, it was like the Nicole stuff and
Nicole
her
stuff.
ultimately getting
Yeah.
cut by Cody. It never fully died down in my eyes, and it was just, as somebody who cares so much about the history and the legacy of the show, it was rough to watch so many players have their like status diminish, their shine diminish. But it was still I was still so much more invested in that season than I would be a random one.
Yeah.
Because I knew who these players were, because I did know like how this impacted their legacy. Um, so I certainly don't hate it as much as most people do, but I fully understand why most people do, because you know ultimately, when you think about the season and what it has done for players, when I talk about certain players, and it's you have to kind of be like, but then they kind of ruined it on season 22.
That's my favorite part of the book, where it's like the end of the chapter and you're like, but now we have to talk about this. Or now we get to this season. And I'm like, I already know what's coming, Taran. Yeah, I love it.
Mm.
Couple other funny questions. Where's the weirdest place or funniest place or most random place that you've had to watch the feeds? Like, are you always home, or are you like, because I've been at dinners before, I've been in cars, I've been on airplanes, like tuning in. Has there ever been a weird random place?
I think I posted about this at the time because I was at a wedding when I think it was when Tommy and Christy finally revealed that they knew each other to the house. Think
Mm.
that was what it was. It had something to do with Tommy in season 21. And I was literally like I took a step outside and like looked at my phone. It was just like blowing up with stuff. And I was just like, oh my God, this is wild. This season, I've talked about this too. It was such a wild season. I didn't have much time to do much stuff. So there was a day I was like, I got to do something. I'm going to the zoo. I was at the zoo
You earned it, Taran.
taking a day off a little bit. I was looking at some elephants. They were, like scooping up hay or whatever they eat, and rubbing against their scratchers and their big elephants. And I was like, this is pretty cool. And I'm looking at my phone, and the judges are forming.
Oh,
I was like, oh, damn. This seems
what do you
important.
do?
I just wait until I get back, and then
Yeah.
I watch it back. I go back.
Damn, it always has something has to be happening at all times. You also talk in the book about, yeah, here we are at 3 a.m. watching Monty
Mhm.
sleep and the leftovers
Mhm.
for it's just it is funny like these memories you have tied to different moments of the show, which I find fun. How do you explain your job to people that don't know you, Taryn? Podcaster? Is that the easy way?
um,
What do you podcast about? Because people ask me, and I'm like, your job is probably way more complicated to explain. Live feed
it is
updates.
it is tricky, for sure. I've gone through many iterations. For a while, it was like podcaster. What do you podcast about? I've tried the like be just general. But then
Yep.
it is, what do you podcast about? Well, I like TV shows. Oh, what TV shows? A bunch, but like primarily this show Big Brother. Like, what is it? It's like a
That's still
reality
on.
competition show. Oh, yeah, yeah. I think I've heard of that. And then it's like, now I know if they've heard of it, if they've seen an advertisement, they're thinking I'm an entirely different person than I am. So now I have to be like, yeah, I talk about like the strategy, the game theory of it. I do a lot of analysis in that way. They're, oh, okay.
Okay, so you've gotten
There's
better at yeah,
so
phrasing
there's
it.
all of that happens sometimes. It got a little bit easier when I was able to now say, I actually wrote a book about the show,
Oh yeah, there you go. You're an author.
which is nice. I wouldn't introduce myself as an author, but like the fact that I've written a book, I think communicates a lot more than like I am a podcaster about a reality show, that you've maybe seen advertisements about, like, what'll you see next this hot summer? So like that's a little bit helpful. Um, Sometimes I just say content creation. I stream on Twitch and stuff like that. If they might know what that is. Um, but yeah, it's a different conversation with every person because there's a different level of knowledge that goes into it every
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, I was just curious because I sometimes struggle. I mean, I could say I'm a journalist, but then what do you do? Okay, cover reality TV, like you said, eventually gets to Big Brother, and then I kind of lose people. People are like,
Content
what?
creator has been really good for me because it is decent. It explains enough, but also people don't know how to clarify from there.
Hmm.
Usually, you could ask what kind of content, but people don't have that. Like when I say podcaster, you always ask, what are you podcasting about? When I say content creator, they're kind of like, oh, like
Okay.
YouTube. I was like, yeah, yeah, I do some stuff
Instagram.
on YouTube. Oh, cool.
And then it ends, and you're like, oh, okay, moving on. Okay, that's good. That's good to know. I'm also just curious, like, have you ever recommended someone to watch Big Brother? And what would your pitch even be? Because I tend not to, and that's not because I don't want more people watching the show. It's just because, well,
Yeah.
like I, I don't. Yeah, I don't know. Have you ever had this issue?
When I was younger, before I podcasted, it was, yeah, basically like the process was I would be friends with somebody. I'd sort of vet them for a period of time until I was like, okay, they're not going to defriend me if I reveal this about myself. And then I would try to sell them on it. And usually it was Dr. Will or Dan Giesling were the selling points. Um, Initially it was Dr. Will because Dan Giesling, even like season 10 was great, but like I Hate You All was better in terms of like attracting viewers. Then when season 14 happened, I was funeral. It was Shane's eviction. I remember being in college, being on a film set, and it was tons of downtime. And I was just like hanging out with people, and I was showing them clips of Dan Giesling and being like, "This is a pretty cool show, right?" And they were like, "Oh wow, this seems awesome," and so that worked out pretty well. But nowadays I don't really try much. We've done a couple of fun like podcasts where it's like I forced the jet lag guys to watch the premiere of Big Brother, or I forced Stephen Fishback to watch the premiere of Big Brother. And it's funny because it is forced, and neither party really continued watching much more beyond that. And I understand that that's going to be the case. Like, Big Brother is the kind of show where you need a certain disposition, you need a certain like set of interests to really dive in. And most people that I talk to don't have those interests. Even if you are somebody that's like, oh yeah, I watch The Traders, or I watch 90 Day Fiance, or whatever. Um,
Hmm.
Big Brother is so different than those things that it's still hard to be like, oh, maybe you could check out Big Brother. Maybe you would like it. Um, I think specifically you'd have to tell me like, oh, I really love like Survivor and the strategy stuff. Then I'd be like, okay, hear me out. It seems ridiculous, but you might love Big Brother. And let me tell you, I don't think I've ever met somebody in real life just randomly that has said those things.
I know. That's why I had to ask. And like you said, it depends on the person. Because like if the person's looking for like more fun, okay, show them like a Brittany Haynes cut or something. I
Right.
guess it depends.
The
But
problem is
yeah,
like at the end of the day, there are better shows
yeah.
for almost everything that Big Brother does, except for the live feeds. And you could argue the strategy that is able to be displayed through live feeds, and then the show itself, because it has a relatively complicated setup. And just like the overall investment you're allowed to have. There is this sort of notion, I don't remember exactly the term, but like the Love Island style of
Mm,
airing its episodes, where it's like it's every weekday essentially. Somebody who likes that may like Big Brother because there's a similar
the
level of
commitment too.
investment.
Yep.
But the people that like Love Island usually like it for the relationship drama stuff. And Big Brother just doesn't. It has showmances, but like it
They
doesn't
try to
have that.
push that on us. But yeah.
So even that's like there's not quite enough connective tissue. If somebody were like,
Yeah.
I love Love Island, but I hate how like silly it is, and I wish there was more of a game, then I'd be like, oh, maybe.
Yeah.
But again,
Yeah.
nobody said that to me.
I've never met anyone either, but yeah. What do you do in your off season? Do you usually like take a vacation? I don't know, do something? Do you celebrate when after the season?
I often say I will take a vacation, but then
Okay. Then you write a
um,
book.
yeah, the last couple of years, it's been writing a lot, or stressed that I have more writing to do. But it's usually just like getting back to life, getting
Yeah.
back on track with like working out regularly again, instead of being like, I gotta skip this one because there's something happening. And yeah, again, like getting better sleep. And
Seeing people.
then yeah. Uh, and then I have like off-season content that I do a lot of the time, whether it's an off-season Big Brother podcast covering other shows. Right now, the Patreon is taking up a ton of my time because I've been covering all kinds of shows like Squid Game, and Physical Asia was so much fun on Netflix.
Okay.
Um, yeah, it's a
I'll check
South
it out.
Korean show that is purely like physical contest. The original version is Physical 100, where they just have 100 athletes compete, and it's very like Squid Game esque in the sense that you can be eliminated at any point. Um, and then
Hmm.
they drop down to one. But then Physical Asia was different countries competing in teams, and then the countries were eliminated. It was very cool. But yeah, then like Amazing
Check it
Race and the
out.
Traders and all that stuff. Um, so I'm doing all that on Patreon right now, and that's taking up a good chunk of like my work time for sure. But then other streams on Twitch and everything else. And maybe eventually I'll get back to writing another book as well. So,
Well, yeah.
we'll see.
Well, that was my like last question. You've been very generous with your time, Taryn. Is what's next in terms of writing? I feel like, I mean, there's more stories happening every year. Do you see yourself eventually writing another book?
I would like to write another book. The main thing I would like to do, honestly, is fiction.
Oh,
That's
wow.
really what I've always wanted to do. I never thought I'd be a nonfiction writer. I loved writing this book, and so now all of a sudden I'm like, maybe I could write nonfiction because this was really fun and I liked it a lot. But on the other hand, it's like there's no nonfiction book I could write that I have as much intimate knowledge of as Big Brother. So
Fair.
I feel like nothing would be as good, although I might be a better writer as I progress. Who knows? So that's on my mind. But I would really love to like really properly fulfill my childhood dream of writing a fiction book, and just trying it at some point. Now that have I've sold a book, I've published a book, it's become a bestseller. It's like there's a chance now I could actually get bought doing something else. Um, but it's still going to be tricky, especially because it's a different whole style of thing and all of that. But um, that would be my hope. But in general, I just love to keep writing because
Mm.
I really enjoyed it and it was a lot of fun and I like it a lot.
Yeah. Well, amazing. Thank you, Taryn. Thank you for taking the time. Of course, go buy Behind the Mirror. I don't know if that is backwards or not,
No, yeah.
um, but yeah, congrats on all the success, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon when the Big Brother season comes around, and everyone can go check out your Patreon where?
It's just Taran Armstrong on
Taran
Patreon.
Armstrong.
Right now, I'm actually doing on top of like covering the shows, I'm also doing an official book club for the book, and I'm
Oh,
going chapter by chapter, really like diving into the details of like the research process, what the intent was behind including it and structuring it in the way that I did, and like where things came from and extra details that didn't fit in the book and all kinds of fun stuff like that. So, um, yeah, if you want to check that out as well, it's over on the Patreon also.
awesome. Well, thank you so much, Taryn, and for the listeners, please like and subscribe as always, and I will be back soon.